Alright, let's evaluate the following limit. Limit as x approaches 3, we have 2x squared minus 5x minus 3 over x squared minus x minus 6. Now, before we actually do anything to simplify this expression on the numerator and denominator, I want to test to see if there are any restrictions with the limit. So I'm going to mainly look at the denominator here. So I'm going to let x approach 3, and when I'm testing the denominator, I'm going to plug in 3 for x, right? So you get 3 squared minus 3 minus 6, which gives us 9 minus 3 minus 6, which gives us 6 minus 6, which is 0, right? So this, you can see here that the limit is problematic because it makes the denominator 0. When the denominator is 0, we get a restriction, right? Because we can't have the denominator of a fraction equaling 0. So let's try to simplify this expression, and let's make sure that this restriction doesn't occur, right? So to simplify this expression, you can notice here that both the numerator and denominator are quadratic expressions. So let's factor out some quadratic expressions. So I'm going to start with the numerator. So we have 2x squared minus 5x minus 3, right? So a here is 2, b here is negative 5, c here is negative 3, right? And you want to basically to factor this, you want two numbers that add up to b that multiply to ac, which is basically equal to negative 6, right? So two numbers that multiply to negative 6 to add up to negative 5, we can basically be using negative 6 and positive 1, right? So we have 2x squared minus 6x plus x minus 3, and I'm going to factor these two and these two out, right? And people have different methods of factoring quadratics, but I tend to use the more fundamental method of factoring, right? As long as it works. So you get 2x plus 1 times x minus 3. So that's basically me factoring out the numerator, right? So this is the numerator factored expression. Now let's take a look at the denominator. So if I'm looking at the denominator, I have x squared minus x minus 6. So you can see here that a here is 1, b here is negative 1, and c here is negative 6. So ac is basically 1 times negative 6, which is negative 6, and then you need two numbers that multiply to ac that add up to b, so you can use like a negative 3 and positive 2, right? So I'm going to replace the middle term with those coefficients, right? And if you guys need some factoring help, be sure to look at some of my previous videos on factoring quadratics, because this stuff is a fundamental concept that you should understand. So you have x plus 2 times x minus 3, and that's basically the denominator, right? So now I'm going to re-plug in all of that. So let's go up here, and we basically have the limit written out again. Limit x approaches 3, but now for the numerator, we're going to have 2x plus 1 and x minus 3, and for the denominator we have x plus 2 and x minus 3. And you can notice here that this x minus 3 is problematic because when x approaches 3, it makes the denominator 0. But now because we have a common factor, we can cancel out the common factors, and now we can see that our expression here doesn't have that restriction on the denominator. So now you can actually substitute and let x equal 3, so you get 2 times 3 plus 1 over 3 plus 2, and that's going to give us 6 plus 1, which is 7, over 3 plus 2, which is 5. So our answer here, when the limit x approaches 3 for this rational expression, or this rational, if you want to consider it a function, it's going to give us 7 over 5.